Hi everyone. We had a bit of a case of Murphy's Law last night where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And we ended up with a hangout recording that was not synced up. The video and the sound do not match. And so we decided to take it offline and we're now re-uploading it with the audio only. Um, So you can listen to it. We have most of the recording. The information is all there. However, the last part, the audio got cut off. And so I'll just do a summary at the end of the recording. All right. Enjoy. Thank you for listening.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Relationship Success Support. In this episode, we're gonna talk about compatibility. Now, in the last Hangout, we talked a lot about commitment. How do you make sure that your relationship lasts? Does it have to last forever? All those types of questions. And compatibility, of course, ties in with that because you kind of want to start a relationship with the right person so that you have the best chance of success. So what does that mean, the right person? Is there a right person? How do you find out? How do you know? How long does it take? Those are the types of questions we're going to discuss tonight and open up to have a more practical approach to compatibility. And tonight I have with me Kim Amoret from Canada. Hi, Kim.
Hi, everyone.
And also Anna from Denmark, but currently in Sweden. Hi, Anna.
Hi guys.
So let's just jump right in. Oh, wait, no. Wait, before we start, I just want to remind everyone we've got the awesome new live chat on the side of the watch page. So if you have any questions that you want to know more about, do try and keep it around the topic of compatibility. But any questions you have, please place them there, and either I will answer it or Anna or Kim will give you a response. Okay, so my question to you guys is, you're both in a committed relationship. So how did you assess compatibility? Like, did you just know that they would be good for you, that you're a good match? Did you have like a checklist you went through? What process did you walk? And how much of it was like conscious and how much was maybe not so conscious? Kim, what was your experience?
My experience at the time when I met Paul was that I wasn't set on looking for a partner at the time. So like I didn't also have any checklist or idea about what I'm looking for, what I want. I was just kind of walking my own process. I was just like, okay, let me just walk my process of getting to know myself, and if the time is right for me to have a partner, then it'll open up for me. And then Paul came along, and we started out just kind of talking, and it's like before we knew it, we just kind of got together in like a natural way, and it was very much based on, I suppose, attraction, and we kind of just rolled into it. And it's only now and after we got together, looking back, that I could see the compatibility, that I could see that that attraction that was there was very much based on like the fact that we did fit well together, that we could relate very much together, and it was like a more real kind of attraction than I had experienced before in my life. And that when we did communicate with each other, there was like an experience of comfort within myself because I was able to relate to him and he was able to relate to me. So it's like we could connect on a kind of a more real level than had ever been the case for me with any other males in my life that I started relationships with. But at the time I was not aware of any of that. I was just kind of going with the flow in a way.
Is it my turn? Yeah. So my experience.
Maite, I think you're placed on mute because I can't hear you and you're speaking.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I did. I didn't unmute myself. Yeah. So, Kim, I wanted to say there's some points you mentioned I want to get back to later, but for now, let's hear what Anna's experience was.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so my experience was, as I shared also in the previous hangout, that I see myself as kind of the bad example, the example of what not to do, which I think is actually really cool to have that as well when you look at these points. Because my approach to my now husband, at the time prospect man, was I just wanted it into a relationship. So I was shooting at anyone who could just be like remotely compatible. You know, my standards were not very high, to be quite honest. And so when I met him, it was more like some very like basic stuff. Like we came from the same part of the world, so my brain could like, okay, so that means that it's kind of practical. You know, he doesn't live in Australia, and then he had some characteristics that reminded me of other boys that I had fallen for in the past. Which was, you know, he was kind of aloof and kind of cool and laid back, and he wasn't very interested in me. So that made me more interested in him. So it was like more like a, you know, it wasn't really about compatibility in a real sense at all. It was more like a sort of teenage kind of approach, which was not very, you know, I didn't at all look at whether we would be compatible. And then what's really interesting is that as the relationship then started to grow, it actually turned out that we are very compatible, but in a completely different way than I had ever expected or thought about in the past. Because in the past, I would think compatibility as being like two people who are very much the same, or who are very, for example, who has the same kind of temperament. And we certainly don't. We're very different, and that, I would say, is a strength. But then we have compatibility in areas like, for example, we've always had a very comfortable relationship with our physical bodies. Like our bodies really like each other. But what's so interesting is that when you're used to the normal dating life, you don't really think about such things because it's on such a, you know, subtle level. You don't really feel, how does it feel in my body when I'm with this person? Am I comfortable touching them, being touched by them? So that's, I find that really interesting. So for me, it's something that's been growing over time. But then also, as Kim said, you know, we realized in the hindsight that we are actually much more alike than we thought. But that's more like because we then started showing and opening up who we really are. And it turns out that we do enjoy each other a lot. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I just want to quickly say we are getting reports that the event is not showing live right now, but we're going to continue going, and hopefully it will either go live at some point or it will just record and we'll publish it when it's done.
Okay, great.
All right.
Yeah.
So my experience was, I was same as Kim initially. I was not looking for a relationship. I kind of idea that that's just not going to happen for at least 2 years or maybe more. Like, relationships is just out of my league at the moment. I'm just focusing on myself. And yeah, then I met LJ, and initially there was also kind of attraction, but that's also what I wanted to ask you, Kim, if the attraction you experienced was the same kind of attraction as with other people. You said it was a deeper kind, but did it also feel different? Like, did you notice a difference in the experience of the attraction?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, like, it came from deeper inside of my body. It's weird to say and maybe weird to hear for people. And it's something that I'm only able to pick up and notice because I've already walked a certain process of getting to know myself on a deeper level. So I'm able to see that distinguish that difference more. But like attraction to other males usually would be very much, it's like on a superficial level in my body as well as my mind, where there's this very intense energy that's very much channeled into like pictures in my mind and ideas in my mind about, oh my god, they're so handsome, or look at that characteristic and that personality trait. So it's like I'm thinking about them a lot more in my conscious mind, and it's like channeled more into that kind of realm in myself, where it's like I'm in a way separating myself from the attraction, and the attraction becomes like an entity in itself that eventually I just kind of get possessed or obsessed about. That was usually my pattern in relationships. But with Paul, it was like it just came from my body itself in a way. Like I wasn't thinking about it. Like I didn't have conscious thoughts about like how attractive he is or how handsome or anything. Or even when we got together, it was still there, but I wasn't thinking about any of it. So
Okay.
that's how I experienced it.
Okay,
That,
cool.
that,
Because
that
I
was
had
just
a
like organic or something.
right. So I had a similar experience. Like I felt, let's call it a pull. And initially it was just like an interest, like who is this person? What is this person? I've never met anyone like this person. But I was fascinated in a way. And I experienced like this pull. The best way I can describe it is like a pull. Like I want to go there. I want to like just spend time with this person, get to know this person. But I was mostly focusing on the pull. I was like, where is this pull coming from? Like, why? And interestingly, what does the mind do? It tends to just hijack whatever experiences we have or whatever sensations that come up inside of us. So I did then go into the energies and the feelings and the thoughts, but it was more like I shouldn't be having this. I should not have any experience. Like if I have any movement inside of me towards anyone else, it has to stop. So here I went and I started writing and forgiving, and I wanted to just take it all out. And to a large extent, I mean, I did. Like the energy was taken out, the ideas, the thoughts. I removed all of that. It was like that draw, that pull, that interest, that like fascination. And I was like, okay, what do I do with this now? So then I was like, okay, let's go and spend time with this person. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen, right? It's not like I'm making any kind of commitments or decision. I'm being very careful here. I've got to check on my mind to not go into all these future projections and already start planning our lives together. So I'm like, let's just try this out. And yeah, that's how I started spending more time with him. And actually, both of you mentioned one dimension. Like Kim mentioned, you were comfortable inside yourself, communicating with Paul. And Anna mentioned physically you were very comfortable, like your bodies liked each other. And those to me are the two big indicators. Like I could talk to him, didn't matter what it was about. And I was always comfortable. I didn't mind talking to him about this or that. Didn't matter how superficial or how deep the topic was. I was just comfortable. And at the same time, when he touched me, it was different. Like I didn't know how it was different, what was different, but I remember going, huh. Like I couldn't put it into words, but it was just like, huh, this is a different kind of touch. I don't know this touch. Because usually also if you have an eye on someone or you're, wanting to go into a relationship with someone and there's touch, it's like, ooh, electricity going through your body or whatever, there's like lots of excitement and energy, and there was none of that. It was just like stable. It was like connecting on that physical level. It's the best way I can describe it, yet it's not any particular experience thing. It was like on the one side a lack of experience, a lack of energy, like the absence of that, but at the same time like that physical here-ness. So okay, cool. So we kind of had that together.
Can I just jump in on that point? I just wanted to say, because I was thinking that, if anyone is watching this and they're single and they do want to going into a relationship, it might sound as though we're saying that that's how you measure not compatibility, compatibilities, that there's like a special feeling, right? That it feels different. And I would say, I don't even know if that's so, if that's so for everyone. I think it could be very different. But and that's of course what makes this, it's difficult to know if you're compatible with someone. There are a lot of dimensions to consider. I just wanted to say that we're not saying that there's like this special feeling you're supposed to have, and then you know that that's the person. Yeah.
Right, definitely. Because I mean, what's usually your sign in relationships, if you go through the usual paradigm, when you connect more on a personality level, is feelings. You're in love with someone. You can't stop thinking about them. You just like, you're in seventh heaven. You're walking on clouds. Yet I don't think any of us had that particular experience of like just the pure love and being in love experience. It was more a, okay, there's a pull, there's an interest. Let's find out, like, who are you? Who am I when I'm with you? What's my body saying? You know, what happens when we talk to each other? Are you supporting me? Are you not supporting me? Does this work, or is there potential here or not? So these initial points, like, I think it is cool to say like, okay, these are points we kind of have in common, which was comfortability, and it can be experienced in different levels, like just being comfortable communicating or comfortability in touch. So those are just some pointers that you can keep with you. However, it's not like, oh no, I know, I'm not having this. Is this comfortability or not? You know, it's not about obsessing over it. But I mean, this is all three of us sharing our experiences. So you kind of have some kind of broad reference of what could be different than usual in your own experiences. So I do want to also like ask about, because also Anna, you mentioned this point of only later did we realize we're compatible. So how important would you say is it to actually get to know each other? Like, is it just those first initial moments, or how important is it to actually get to know each other?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and again, I am the classic example of what not to do, because we, well, in a way and in a way not, but we kind of rushed into it quite immediately. But then because we didn't live in the same country, we were kind of forced to start through having a long distance relationship where we would speak over Skype. And I think that's supported because that kind of sets up the stage of getting to know each other, because you're not having that, you know, in love and having sex, and especially when you start a relationship in this way, as we often do in Destiny, where it's an agreement. So, but I would say that it's definitely important. And I heard someone say once that if you want to assess whether you're compatible with someone, you should go traveling with them. So like take a trip. And I actually think that's a really good practical suggestion, because by taking a trip, you know, it doesn't have to be across the world or this like major thing, but just like going camping, for example, you see the person, you know, in a real situation, and you know, you have to problem solve together and see how you communicate. But even that, you know, can't necessarily be an assessment, because for me, I mean, it took me a very long time before I actually really started to see who my partner was, because I had a lot of judgments and beliefs and like filters over my eyes that caused me to not see who he really was. And so I was, for a very long time, I was actually also missing out on a lot of him. I was kind of seeing him in a one-dimensional light as I had been used to in the past. So it does take time to really get to know someone and find out whether that compatibility is real. And sometimes you may even find out several years into the relationship that, yeah, or it's just not here anymore.
Kim, what is your perspective on this? How important is it to get to know someone?
Well, just like with Anna, how my relationship with Paul started is that we barely got to know each other in a way, because we only knew each other for maybe a month and a half, and we already decided that we're gonna be together because we already had sex and everything. So it's like, okay. Um, but obviously being together kind of forces you to get to know each other, maybe more the hard way. So in a way, I wanted to, and it was kind of my intention to get to know him before acting on that attraction that I was experiencing, and I was really trying to do that, to just sit down with him and have our little conversations that we were having in the morning when we saw each other, to kind of develop that comfortability that he was also experiencing when we were just talking and communicating. But yeah, at the moment, like that attraction, I just kind of allowed myself to get carried away with that, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it happened and we got to know each other regardless. And I think I think that my perspective on how important it is to get to know each other, I think mostly would come from when we were apart for a very long time. When I was in South Africa and he was in Canada, and all we had was our communication over Skype and Viber and stuff. And it's then that we actually got to really appreciate the value of communication and the value of getting to know each other on a deeper level. And that it's that communication, getting to know each other and kind of stepping beyond attraction or experiences or those kind of things. It's that creates that comfort that you eventually look for within the relationship, and that eventually allows you to connect to the person on that deeper level, and that eventually forms the foundation and the stability point for the relationship. It is getting to know each other in whatever way that occurs.
Cool. Yeah, I like you both also mentioned this point of the online communication, because I'm sure a lot of people have this idea that with the current how do you call that, the kids of today, this whole internet age, and how dating is often done online and it's not the real thing. And the way you used to do it in the good old days was you actually would go meet someone and talk to them in the physical, and that's how it works, and that's how you're actually supposed to do it. And all this online stuff is really, all this online stuff is really, it's not real. It's just like this weird chitty chatty stuff, like whatever that is. But I mean, it
there's
is
also there's also just been a shift in like, now you have Tinder and things like that, like applications where you literally just swipe into a certain direction if you like someone, and then you just kind of hook up just to have sex. And in the olden days, I suppose it was you go and meet someone in order to establish a relationship with that person. Like, it's not just going to be a fling. Like, it's more, I suppose, more serious. That's how I see it. Like, it used to be relationships in general, and interaction and sex used to just be taken more seriously than it is now.
Right. Though you do have some really cool tools. I mean, there was a period of time where me and my partner were apart for 3 months as well, and it was also early on in the relationship. And same for you guys. You have just that focus on only your words, only your communication, only sharing yourself, sharing your experiences. And I wonder, let's put it like this, I wonder how many relationships actually lost if this is all you have, where you're not touching each other, you're not promising to see each other tomorrow, and there's no kissing, and there's no touching, and there's no building of that experience and that excitement. And I think that is a cool part of online dating. Of course, as with everything, you can have flings in the physical, you can go out to clubs and have one night stands, and the same on the internet. You can go Tindering and just swiping and jumping into things, or you can actually use the tools that are here in a way that's supportive. So I don't think it's about this is good and this is the right way, and people were serious back then and not serious now. I'd say it really depends on how you use what is here. But yeah, for me, that point of getting to know someone, I would say that is very important. So if you initially have an inkling that this person might be interesting, cool. Doesn't mean you have to marry them. No, you have time to start dating each other, or, you know, if you live far away, you can communicate online. If you live closer, you can just date and spend a lot of time together, or go on a trip, go traveling, you know, whatever, just go for it. Doesn't mean you have to wait to start a relationship either. I mean, you can just take it slow and assess as you go. Anna, you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say that, because I agree with you, that it depends on how you use it. And I remember that one thing that we did, which was something that my partner insisted on, was that first of all, we had to meet every day. And remember, this wasn't like we meet every day because we're so in love. This was like, we're meeting every day on Skype to get, with the purpose of getting to know each other. So we would meet on days where I didn't feel like it at all, and where I didn't want him to see me in a certain experience. Whereas, you know, normally how you would do it is that you would only show your best self. You would only share, you know, when you look good and when you feel good. So, like, that's just to say that it depends on how you use it. You can actually use it as a really cool, serious tool to assess compatibility. And then it's, you can share your life stories and what's your perspective on having children, you know, all of these things that makes a difference to whether we want to be together. Yeah.
Cool. I like what you said there as well. These types of topics of, do you want to have kids or not? It's important. It's gonna play a role in terms of whether you're going to be together 10 years from now or not. And this is actually a question we got. Is there such a thing as the right one for each one to ensure that a relationship works or is successful, or what would this depend on? Kim, do you have a perspective on this? If you have the right person, will you stay together forever? Oh, you're still muted, Kim.
I would say no, because I've been looking at that point, and like with me and Paul, we are, I would say, very compatible. And if I look at it, I always think, you know, if it was anybody else, like, it just would not have worked up to the point that it has been working for now. But still, even though we are very compatible in a lot of ways, and we do get along very easily, and things work like easy for us in a way, there has been some points where we did almost break up because of some stupid reaction that came up. And if I and him had not in that moment been self-honest and applied the tools and directed ourselves and taken responsibility for the point, it could have led to a breakup. So in any relationship, this point of compatibility doesn't really hold a candle against your own application of the tools, your own, you know, taking responsibility for your own reactions, making sure that they don't ripple and create consequences in the relationship, you know, just taking responsibility and making sure that points are directed within the relationship. It's like applying principles. It's always going to be the most important thing in any relationship. And compatibility is like, I suppose, a side point that can also act as a point of support, but is definitely not the determining factor. You're so muted.
What's your perspective, Anna?
My perspective is I agree. I don't see, and it also comes back to the point of the starting point of going into this relationship, which was a decision I made. I decided to be with this person, also based on compatibility, and being with my husband is supporting me in very specific ways, the way he is and the way I am and the way we merge or interact with each other is supporting specific aspects of me. And if I would have been with someone else, it might have been different aspects, or it might have been the exact same. So it's, I don't think that there is only some people we can be compatible with, but I will say that there might be people where it is very difficult. So that would be people where the way that we're programmed, the way that we're raised, the way that our minds and personalities have built are so completely contradicting, or they, because I think we've all also experienced this. I have for certain in my relationship that personalities can kind of clash, or they can even, like one partner has a dominant aspect and the other partner has a submissive aspect that they have with them from their, you know, their childhood and the way their mind is developed, and those 2 points make for a destructive combination, where, for example, violence could come up, or abuse between the partners, or even that it can even be too compatible in a way where there's no you could say supportive friction, you know, where it doesn't challenge you at all. Yes, because I've actually seen such a relationship, which I had no idea was possible, where the 2 partners actually kind of devolved within themselves. They became, you know, everything was just fine all the time. And it's not to say that there's anything wrong with having a nice, comfortable relationship, but you could see that both of them, they weren't evolving, they weren't developing. So I think that those are kind of the extremes, where either it triggers some very, very destructive patterns that the 2 people simply, they haven't developed themselves enough to be able to handle it or transcend it at that point. And so it's better not to be with that person, or it's like too complacent. And everything in between there, I would say, could be cool. Like everything in between there is a potential. And that's actually a really cool way to look at relationships, because it makes it much more about who we are in the moment. Are we compatible in this conversation we're having right now? How do we meet each other in this moment right now, instead of assuming that there's this like constant foundation of compatibility that's just, you know, that makes us take each other for granted.
Right. So here what you're looking at is you've got a level of comfortability that's going to help you just open up and be comfortable to walk your own stuff and walk your own process,
Yes.
and give you also kind of a confidence to do that and be open and be vulnerable. But at the same time, you're not going to agree on everything from the beginning. I mean, because if that happens, then, as you say, what are you going to learn? Nothing. You're just going to kind of be with yourself. It's just going to be a clone. And, you know, what are you going to learn? So that's a very cool way to look at it. You have that level of comfortability, but you're going to also have friction. I mean, because you're different people. And you know what, though? I mean, I've found that with any relationship, you can go into that point of complacency, even if initially there was challenge and you were pushing each other and there was growth and development, but then you kind of have like, you've established your foundation, and then it's like, no, it's nice here. And you kind of build this comfort zone, and you fall into a routine. And yeah, I mean, you could still push yourself and each other, but yeah, it's just nice here, you know. So I'm not sure to what extent is that compatibility, to what extent is that you're applying yourself. So that's the whole dynamic we're talking about. Kim also mentioned compatibility in and of itself. No, it's not going to guarantee everything. And, you know, your application, yeah, is important. But as Anna said, if it's too challenging, then, I mean, you don't have to do that. There's no point. Let's say, theoretically, you could be with anyone. In theory, because what do? You are first and foremost standing with yourself. You have your relationship with yourself. That's what you're working on. And, you know, if you're now challenged by one person or by another person, or learning how to communicate with one person or another, does it really matter? Well, in theory, it doesn't. But practically speaking, I mean, we have different backgrounds, different ways that we were raised, different ways of looking at things. So with one person, it's going to be extremely challenging. And then the question is, to what extent are you actually going to be able to focus on yourself? And to what extent are you just going to try and manage this relationship? Because, hello, there's just like fireworks the whole time. So that is kind of the balance that you're looking at. Cool. Then I have one more point I want to just touch on, and that is, how do you assess whether you are still right for each other? Say 5 years down the line, obviously you're both changing. That's kind of, I mean, the way we approach it in Destiny, at least, we hope that after 5 years, you both kind of change and you're not the same person anymore. How do you assess that this relationship is still supportive, that you are still compatible? What is your perspective, Kim?
Well, the point I've been looking at is that there might be like ideas that we have about what a relationship should be, in terms of, for instance, with me, there's been the idea of, I need to be in this relationship and make it work, and it needs to be successful, and it needs to be long lasting. And basically, if I break up with this person, it's going to be a failure. That means that I'm, have not been able to make it succeed. And it is, in a way, a bad point on my report. And so it's to, first of all, let go of those ideas, because to an extent, sure, it's cool to keep going for it and to not just give up at at any reaction that comes up, and to take everything that comes up as a challenge for yourself, to get to know yourself better, to work through points. But at the same time, just because you've developed certain relationships in your life doesn't mean that those relationships need to be there for some reason, or have to stick around for some reason just because. It's like, the relationships are there to assist and support you to face certain things inside of yourself, work through certain points inside of yourselves. And it's possible that, at a certain point you do break up with a person, because at that moment in time, that is what would be supportive for you in your personal process of development. So that's just something that you can only measure or be able to indicate through self-honesty, through just in every moment being honest with yourself about who you are, and assess, like, okay, is this just a reaction? Is this just an idea? Where am I coming from within myself? And just make sure that you keep on assisting and supporting yourself in the best way possible. So, and to not see breaking up with someone as a bad thing. It can be something that's necessary, but it's just for yourself to assess.
Cool, thanks. Anna, do you have something to add to that?
Well, yeah, I've also been looking at this point, and actually I would say that it's something that I look at regularly, because I want to be able to check myself and make sure that I don't stay in a relationship out of fear or out of complacency or dependency, because I've done that in the past, and it was very destructive for me, because I was essentially lying to myself. I was with this person, and of course lying to them also in a way, but so I want to make sure that I know when it's time, or if it's time to move on. So what I do is that I kind of look at it like a worst case scenario. I imagine that happens, and the whole practical implications of not being together, and I have to move, and how would that be, and then I look at that point, who would I be, what would I do, and of course at this point we've been together for so long, and we're about to have a child together, so it's not like I would think it to be a fun situation, but more that I want to make sure that I'm stable within that. That then I would simply take care of things and move and do what's necessary. But I will say that we've had moments where we've, for example, used it against each other.
All right, so this is where the Hangouts cut off and we're missing the last part of the audio. So Anna was talking about how, her and her partner would sometimes use the phrase, I'm going to break up with you, as a point of manipulation in arguments or fights. And how, you can have those momentary points where you want to just be apart and you want to break up. But what we just summarize what we discussed in this last section, is that it is cool to actually build in moments of checking in where it's not in a moment of reaction or in a moment of fighting or trying to be right, but just checking in with yourself once in a while. Is this relationship still supporting me? Are we still supporting each other? Are we growing? Are we expanding? Or are we more like in a point of complacency? Are we devolving? Are we stuck? Are we actually harming each other? What's the story? Because you often get to a point where you do go into a certain routine, or you just take each other for granted, and you might not look at it or not see it happening. So once in a while, to just have a look and check in and look at those points. And the other point we discussed is that when you aren't sure if the relationship is still supportive, and you have doubts, is that you don't also necessarily have to right away make a decision to now split up. But you could, for instance, look at and evaluate, okay, what are all the points that we haven't been doing that we should have been doing? Where have we not been honoring ourselves and each other? Where are we not honoring the agreement that we started with? And then look at, well, okay, these are the things that we can do more of. Let's practice doing this. Let's do this approach. And then give yourselves like a few months to unconditionally taste, like, all right, is it really that we are not compatible at this point in our lives, or is it more that we both have been lacking in our application? So that's one way you can approach it. Or another way you can give yourselves time is to take time apart for a while, where you again don't have to make a final decision yet, but you just take time apart where you maybe first each can connect with yourselves again. And from there, allow some time to pause and maybe just communicate over the internet or over the phone, and take a more long distance approach, and then come together again and make a decision about what you've seen, so that you don't make rash decisions that you might later regret. You actually allow yourself the time to find out and be sure to see what it is that's actually happening and what would be the best solution and direction. And that's about where we ended the hangout. So thank you everyone for listening, not watching this time, but listening. And we hope to see you next month. Bye.